However, there were several people who, like George said, were sneaking in the kitchen and getting into the cookie jar. And it happened a lot. So
I don't want to mention any names, but Mr. Legend was one of them. I'm just saying.
Okay. A lot of wrestlers, there seemed to be a revolving door of talent, right, which for some fans was a really good thing because that meant you got to see a lot of workers. For me, I got to see a lot of people. But there was also a lot of people who left and didn't come back. Why do you think that was?
There were certain people who were asked not to come back. Attitude problems, not following up. I'm not saying any names, but there was this one guy who we pushed like to the moon, and he decided to no-show several times and put the blame on George.
Oh yeah, that guy. Just tell him.
Well, I don't really want to go into it.
No,
I really don't. You can go into it all you want.
Kennedy Kendrick, every damn week, would tell me, yes, I'll be there. I would tell him he was going to be there. I get to the show, couldn't get a hold of him. Every week it happened.
We pushed Kennedy really hard for the hybrid title. We put him over on Lewis, who was possibly the biggest baby at the time. This is before your time there, I believe. I believe you came right after Kennedy was. Yeah, you did. It was the week after that Kennedy was stripped of the title, actually, which was a decision that me and George and a couple other people had decided on. George, being a good friend of Kennedy's, he felt it was something that needed to happen. And titles and eKlipse were always a headache because we always had run into these issues. But basically, like we would run into like certain issues with things like that. There were certain guys that we just didn't have anything for anymore. A lot of people took that hard way. I don't even care. Torture dropped the ball a million times. I tried to push him really hard. I tried to give him all the chances in the world, and he would either no-show, or he'd show up and then have his gear, or he'd come up with an excuse of why he couldn't work this week or that week or whatever. And it was like, you came to us wanting to do this and wanting to be in this, in the heavyweight title picture, and while we put you out there, you dropped the ball. I mean, there were several times I had guys come in the back and threaten never to come back because of antics he would pull. George was one of the people who was upset that during an angle he was doing, Torture decided to just burst to the court and go, "Is my match yet?" And then go back. And he did it for an entire show. Every match he would do it out there and do it. "Is my match yet?" Scream, whole fans look over there, quit paying attention to the match that's going on, and then we'd have these issues.
That was stupid.
We had a lot of people who would come in that just thought they were bigger than wrestling, and we didn't really tolerate a lot of that kind of stuff, or at least try not to. There were certain people that we gave more leniency to due to certain circumstances, but I got
away with murder.
I think a lot of people, could debate whether or not there was other issues. I'm sure that there's several people out there who have different opinions. But majority of people who came in and didn't come back were because of issues backstage or because we really just had no use for them anymore. The worst possible scenario was people who came in, and I don't like to say names, but people who came in and they just stunk the place up terribly, like more than anything you can imagine.
I stole the 3D kids from you. I did.
Okay.
I did.
What was that you stole?
I stole the 3D kids.
The 3D kids?
I stole them. Bendejo, Jay, Marvel, Betsy, Leva, all of them. I brought them into my company. Nope, this is PWA. I don't have to mention it. Only because I thought that they needed to work in a real ring. No offense. But they needed to. They were going through the Dudley School. They needed to get in front of a real ring and in front of one of, I believe, a very tough crowd.
Okay. I'm going to ask, in a minute or less, what was the idea behind the hybrid title?
The hybrid title was exactly what it sounds like, I guess, was a hybrid. It was a influx of different styles of wrestling that a lot of people try to ignore. The older school guys like to kayfabe these things, but to me it was more the idea of, I didn't want it to have gimmicks. I didn't want people to come and say, like, oh, did you see whenever this so-and-so backstabbed this guy to win the hybrid title? We wanted really clean-cut matches. We wanted matches that fans who enjoyed the Japanese style, the ROH style, the Mexican style, and these different styles to be able to come in and watch these, a hybrid of styles mixed together. And that's kind of the concept behind that title was to have a cruiserweight-ish title that was based on wrestling skill alone.
Okay. I'm going to ask you both this. What were the standout matches, and I'll ask individually, what were the standout matches that you remember from PWE? or feuds?
Simon Says and O'Toole.
Yeah, I'll let you talk about that one first. Can you give me 30 seconds about it?
I just remember it was like 9-10 chair shots that O'Toole kept getting up, taking it,
13 stitches.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. There was blood everywhere. That was good though. Right up until torture messed up. The virus torture angle was very good. Me and him used to talk about it. I actually liked that angle. A lot of the angles and a lot of matches were good. A lot of the angles, however, were stop and go because of various reasons. Guys not coming back, guys leaving, booking not following up on it. I mean, there was a lot of, I guess, pretty much the same as every other indie fed. But quite honestly, when there were more boys than there were crowd, you tend to notice these things more often. One of the biggest problems that we had, and let's say this, is that I worked the show and then I gave it a shitty review. And you didn't want me to do that. But even if the company that I'm running now had a shitty show, I'll be the first to say it. I mean, if you're gonna write a review, you got to be fair.
A lot of my problem back then, and this is all off topic what he wanted us to do, but a lot of my problem back then was that I was more into trying to please everyone and not give a fuck about what I needed to get done. And I was trying to do everything at once. I was trying to give a fuck about the show and put my passion into it while keeping this handful of people happy. And this is where I guess the shoot starts. And the issue was that I was a pussy about it. And that's not the case at the end, because I got to the point where I was literally should have done what I did originally, when I was like, if you don't want to do what I fucking want you to do, if you don't want to say, if you don't want to go out there and do this, if you can't make it this day, you can't do these things, I don't want you back. And my problem was that I was so concerned with mutinies and bullshit, and George knows what I'm talking about, people who are trying to pull their weight around, and if this doesn't go my way, then I'm leaving and I'm taking this core guys with me. So I was basically put in this position where it felt like I'm going to show up on a Friday and I'm going to have no one to work my show because I have people pulling their weight around for no reason. And I basically had to learn the hard way that that's not going to happen.
What would you have done differently?
In all honesty, I would not have ever brought in Louis Montos to be my partner. I would not have given in so lightly to certain requests, and I definitely would have made sure that I secured a better contract with Joe Bob's.
Okay. How did Joe Bob's affect the show?
How did he not? If Bob didn't like something, if George walked in and didn't say the right thing or the wrong thing, he'd want him gone. So then I'd spend the entire fucking show trying to explain why I can't fire George Martel, why I can't fire CJ O'Doyle. Like, I had ran into so many instances where one of his kids would not like someone because they were healing it up and they took it personally, and I had to fight with them for hours. You were there. Cops were called on people because Bob refused to comp people. Bob refused to give us the pay that we our door. There were many times that I didn't get anything, and I used to pay out of the pocket, and I'd get in arguments with people because they thought I was paying everyone but them. Somebody sitting next to me.
Listen, man.
But
you don't want to get into that.
But truthfully, there were several times that I put out anywhere from. I remember a time I put out $120 one night to make sure I could get everyone, at least I could, gas money. Bob really sunk a lot of the show. He would sit here and preach about how we need to bring in more crowds, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do this, we need to do that, and then put nothing behind it. I can't tell you how many times I went through issues where he didn't want certain people there. There were times he'd come in a bad mood and try to tell me he needed to cancel the show. And I've got fans sitting in the seats. I've got workers in the back dressed, ready to go. And we're 15 minutes from starting. And I don't want the show tonight. You guys need to cancel. I'm going to go home. And, I had to deal with these dramas all the time. And the worst thing about Bob is that he tries to intimidate people. So then I had to deal with workers versus Bob. And I had to deal with workers' girlfriends versus Bob, and I had to do it. And he's just, I don't even, what would the word be?
Asshole.